Welcome everyone to Aisha's Thursday Night Live. My name is Rabbi Elliot Matthias. So excited for everyone joining us tonight. Thursday Night Live is Aisha's weekly program where we bring on fascinating guests, talk about relevant topics having to do with different Jewish ideas. And we have an amazing program tonight as we're leading up into Passover. This is a three-part series going into Passover, but really, I think, approaching it from a very unique angle. Our guest tonight is Andrew Funk. We'll bring Andrew up on stage. I'll just do a quick introduction to Andrew. Andrew, in 2015, was homeless. He found himself homeless on the streets, and since that time, today, it's unbelievable what he is doing. He's now the president of a nonprofit organization called the Homeless Entrepreneur. They empower homeless people by providing tools, resources, a network, unconditional love, and a holistic program to foster economic empowerment to end homelessness amongst those willing and able to participate. It's really our honor to have Andrew on tonight. Even though he's originally from Minneapolis, he now lives in Spain, so it's quite late there in the middle of the night right now. So we're so excited that he could join us. Andrew, welcome to the show.
Shalom. Thank you for the opportunity to be here.
Absolutely. It's our honor. Your story and what you do now day to day to make a difference in the world, it's really special, and we're excited that you can join us tonight for Thursday Night Live.
Thank you.
So Andrew, why don't we start, I think, just get to the heart of it. How did you find yourself being homeless? What happened?
Well, basically, I had just raised 300,000 euros for a new company. It was a way of matching investors and entrepreneurs. And my first child was going to be born. So I was going into my dream, if you will. And then that money was mismanaged by partners. That caused problems at home. And then I found myself in a nightmare. And thanks to my current wife, I've had the opportunity to change my life and turn it around. But it was trying to find a solution for myself. I had 35,000 followers on social media, entrepreneurial spirit, and the desire to change my life. So when I did that, I wanted to first help myself, and then I was able to help others. So it's something that can happen to anyone. I had family back home in the States, but I was living in Barcelona, Spain, and I was unwilling to change my location. And I preferred to be homeless and in Spain near my son than go back to find a roof. No, the concept of home is different. I think in Jewish community, the concept of wandering, exodus. I was in a personal exodus myself, and I was trying to find a way to be at peace with myself and then help others after I did that. So that's a brief summary, but basically it's up here, down, and then up to try to help other people as well.
Okay, so let's unpack that a little bit, because you gave us the whole synopsis there, and obviously you've gone through a whole journey, like you said, from the top to the bottom to the top. But I think a lot of people have the conception that people that are homeless are, mentally ill, are on drugs.
Yeah.
Maybe I misunderstood a little bit, because I'm sure you just put together a lot in a few statements, but it almost sounded like you chose it a little bit. I don't think that's accurate, but you found yourself in a difficult situation. You had alternatives, but you chose to go that route. Tell me a little bit more your thinking at that point, that when it was about to happen.
Well, if you think about it, what most people think as being the main reason why people are homeless, which is mental health and drug abuse, is really a minority. It represents about 15-16% of the reasons why people become homeless. The reality is most people become homeless because they lose their job, they don't have enough income, or they have a break in some kind of family. So my personal situation was money related, and then family related. And then I had to make a decision of trying to improve my situation in the current city. My family always could have taken me back home, but I had my family here as well. So the reality of the situation is, when you're confronted with that kind of obstacle, it's fight or flight in that regard, and I chose to fight. And when you fall to the bottom, when you hit rock bottom, if you will, you also learn more about yourself, understand what your limits are, and also what your core and your essence is as a person. And it helped me become a better person. It wasn't because of drugs, it wasn't mental health. It was just situation with work, and then my personal situation. So trying to understand how I could get back on my feet was a challenge, but it's something that everyone goes through a different situation, and everyone has a different story. And this is what we try to do. I'll explain this later, but we work with basically about 35% of the homeless population, which are people that are willing and able to work and get back into the community, closer to it. So
Okay.
there's a lot of stories in there, but at the end of the day, it's finding ways to overcome certain obstacles.
Right. So I want to definitely get into that, the amazing work you do. My sense, though, is that for many people, for many of us that are not homeless, many of us
Yeah,
see homeless people. It's almost like they're invisible. It's like there's a sense of when you see someone in that situation, and the easiest thing is to walk right by. And I feel that the challenge, and I think I want to get more into this, is that to help people, you have to have empathy. You have to
yeah,
see that person as a human being. In Judaism, we say seeing a person created in the image of God, that person is a soul, that person can be your
yeah,
brother, your sister, your parent, can be you.
yeah,
But I
yeah.
think to
Of course.
really to have that empathy, if it's okay with you, I'd like to just go a little bit more into your situation, because I feel that if
Yeah,
people can meet you and see
yeah,
someone that they can relate to and understand what happened to you, then maybe when we see
yeah,
other people on the street, we might understand. So I don't know how much you can go into detail, but what was
yeah.
it that first night you found yourself on the street? What was your emotion? What was going through your head? What was going through your emotions? What was that like? If you could take us back to that.
Yeah, of course. Just to clarify one point as well, as, people always, many times refer to homeless people as being invisible. And it's actually the most visible aspect of homelessness. A woman in an abusive relationship with a roof over her head is considered homeless, and she's much more hidden than someone in the street. We always say that homeless people aren't invisible, society is blind. So we try to find ways to help them empathize so that way they can see the people that are actually right in front of them. But my very first night, I remember sleeping in front of a train station in Barcelona Sands, and I had no money. I didn't know what I was going to do. It's just kind of strange because the night is very, very long. You go to sleep earlier, you lie down, you try to sleep, but your brain is going all over the place trying to understand the situation. And I remember I woke up at about 2:30 in the morning because there was this strange echo because the acoustics of the place I was sleeping in and the insecurity. So you would hear people that were like 50 meters away, 100 meters away, but it seemed like they were right next to you. So you had this constant sense of someone being able to rob you, stab you, or just violate your space and your privacy. And I woke up hyperventilating at like 2:30, just because like the entire situation, trying to understand, and it was too much. But I went back to sleep, and then after you get through the night, the hard part is trying to figure out how to get through the day too. Because it's the uncertainty of the night and the uncertainty of the day, and the strange thing is you actually you need resources, you need money, you need to do something because you have to eat, you have basic needs you need to fulfill. And I remember, like, asking for change is probably the most I don't know if humbling experience is the right word, but it might be correct to use that term. And you could actually you're looking at people's pockets, because when you're sitting down you're at pocket level, and you
Hmm.
can hear because you become hypersensitive to what you need. So if you're thirsty, you become hypersensitive to water. If you need money, you become hypersensitive to hearing that. So you can actually hear coins bouncing around in people's pockets as they said, "Sorry, I don't have any change." And that reminds me when I had a car accident once before I came to Spain. Actually, everything was slow motion. So I would say that if people want to understand that, maybe more people have experienced car accidents than homelessness. Even though you have about 550,000 homeless people in the United States right now. But at the end of the day, it's your life goes into slow motion, and you try to understand yourself better. You try to really deal with the situation, which is complicated. That's an image actually of me in front of the place I slept at for the first night, and that's, it's, I guess it's just challenging to really understand, like, how to get used to the fact that the ground is very hard and cold, that cardboard becomes your bed, and you have to be a friend of uncertainty, which is a bit nerve-wracking. So I think that stress is hard. The street kills. It reduces your health, your physical health, your psychological health, mental health. Everything just deteriorates, and I think that's the hardest thing. Trying to figure out how to survive, and then once you learn how to survive, how to thrive, because what you learn to survive doesn't necessarily help you thrive. And I think that's the big challenge, and that's what I've tried to transmit to other people as well, so that way they can overcome their state of homelessness too.
That was, first of all, thank you for sharing that. I'm sure that's not easy, and what you said about homeless people not being invisible, but society being blind, that's a amazing idea, and something for sure for us to think more about. But you said the idea of sort of getting used to, you get used to certain things, or you learn how to survive, and I assume that's a necessary reaction. But you said that could sometimes be the antithesis of learning how to thrive. And I was going to really ask you a question a little later on, but I want to get to it now. It's interesting in Passover, which this is sort of talking about in the theme of Passover. One of the themes is slavery, going from slavery to freedom. And we talk about, well, we believe in the story of the Jewish people were slaves, they were freed, they went to the land of Israel. But we really look at it in a personal way, that we all have certain slaveries, we have certain things that are holding us back, and our goal in life is to sort of become free from them. And it's amazing that we all sometimes can be even aware of our quote unquote slaveries, the things that are holding us back, whether they're internal, we get angry, we get jealous, or whether they're external situations we find ourselves in, but we almost get used to it. And that getting used to it can almost be a block from us being able to break free from it. So I wonder, when you talk about that, I mean, in your experience, I guess that would be the best if you could talk about your experience or what you've learned dealing with others that are homeless. Do people get used to it? Is that something that, I don't want to say it gets easier, but did you get used to it? And was that a block for you to being able to get out of it?
Well, I think, the concept of being comfortably numb. And I think if you become comfortably numb, you don't change your situation, because you have to be accountable. And when you become used to your situation, it's terrible and you can't change your life. So it's a challenge. I was having a conversation with a good friend of mine back home, and she's going through a rough moment right now. And she said, because she's well off, she doesn't have any economic issues. And she said, I just realized, she had an epiphany, and she said, I can be in a mansion and feel homeless, and someone living in the street can feel more at home than how I feel in my current situation. And I think the concept of what you said about being enslaved to your own life, maybe, or your certain circumstance or situation, and how we free ourselves from that and liberate ourselves from certain situations. Because homelessness isn't just a housing situation, it's also a mentality or state of mind. So it's really understanding, what home means to you. And I think that's something that the Jewish community can understand quite well, because that sense of community, even if you're displaced, you have that sense that you're a member of that community, which provides home. Not necessarily a house, but a home for sure. And I think that community and being able to be an active citizen is something that's really important. I mean, I remember when I was, I think, 17, I wanted to go be on a kibbutz. I never had a chance to do that. But the sense of a community with other people that you don't know, and joining and being a unity, if uniting together and doing something, is very powerful. And I think people become used to their situation, And normally it can be easier to be homeless than to have all that responsibility. Again, paying for rent, paying for taxes, having to be on time. But there's not, even when you're in the street though, you still have the rules you have to live by because you live by the police and their rules. So you wake up earlier. You normally try to go to sleep earlier. There are other rules that you live by. So it's a different situation. There's a moment that's liberating about it because if the weather's nice and you're sleeping outside, you have the stars. You don't have that when you sleep in your bedroom. So there are other things that you appreciate because of it. But generally speaking, I think it's better to be in a home with a bed. But there are moments that give you the opportunity to see how you can liberate yourself and be free from things that currently enslave us.
Wow. So are you even saying, it's interesting in this last year with COVID and so many ways of life that we've all been used to that have just gotten flipped on its head. And I've heard many people say, during when so much is stripped away, things that again, we're getting off the topic of homelessness, but just the general idea of things we get used to that you were talking to. I'm used to going to these restaurants. I'm used to doing this. I'm used to doing that. And it gets stripped away and you almost have to go to your core. You start to realize what's necessary, what's really important in life, and what's a luxury. It sounds to me that I wonder if that process for you and being homeless and sort of hitting that core of really, in some way, did that help you sort of recover out of it? Was that part of your process?
I think it was part of me becoming a better person. Because when you have everything or a lot of things taken for granted, you look at life differently. But when you realize that everything you have, you can basically walk with on your back, or carry in your hands or your pockets, and you realize that you just have a lot of material that's just not necessary. It's nice, but it's not necessary. So I think it forces you to redefine your values, your life mission, principles. More is just, really, it strips you down naked, and you have to look in the mirror, and you have to find ways to appreciate the scars that you have, and also find a way to smile through it. Also, if you ask people in poverty about their health and people that aren't in poverty, the perception is quite similar. So people do adapt to it. And I think generally speaking, people want to be happy. So they find ways to do it. Unfortunately, in the streets, there are many temptations, if you will, that are used as entertainment to pass time. Because, we always say there are two things. The last two things you lose are hope and your cell phone, right? Because that's the connection. It's the connection to the real world, if you will, the other, people that do have those things. And it's really connectivity, being part of a community is extremely important. And even though people aren't able to have maybe data or credit on their phone, they use libraries, they find coffee shops, and they use Wi-Fi so that way they can look at the news, so they can send messages, they can share pictures. And I think that, for example, that image there, that's the World Economic Forum. We went there for the last 3 years. This year we didn't go yet because of COVID. We'll most likely go to Singapore. But when we went there, we ended up sleeping in a teepee, 20 below zero, 5 nights, to give homeless people a voice. There's a strong commitment behind what I do because of what I experienced. And I think when you go through hardship, as long as you survive, and if you're able to thrive, then you can help bring other people up as well. So I think there's an amazing opportunity for those that go through that moment to open up doors for others, so that way they have hope of being part of society again.
It's amazing. There is a Jewish idea that in the Talmud it talks about the idea of poverty. Why is there poverty? And talking about, that it's a curse. People that are in poverty are cursed. But really, the rabbis flip it on its head and say that in a certain way, poverty is our opportunity, like I said, to exhibit empathy, to give kindness, to care for each other. In your story, was there, did you find those moments that people reached out to you? Did that happen to you, that you felt that empathy or that caring?
Well, I mean, the main moment would have been, when my current wife, you know, let me in to her home. This was before we had a formal relationship, and I don't want to use like the the mountain metaphor, but I was sitting near it's called Montjuic, which means Jewish mountain, which
Hmm.
is ironic, no? But I was sitting on the Jewish mountain in Barcelona, and I remember explaining that I didn't have a place to go, and so that moment of empathy was a game changer in my life, and it was one of many because you need so much. It's not just one thing that you need to improve your life, so that way you can keep going. You need so many different things. I mean, in our network, you need at least 30 people, a network of at least 30 people to accompany one person during a year. And that's really a small number if you think about it. So it's, I think, the moments when you really have to just be as sincere as possible, which is hard sometimes, but you're just completely sincere with the other person, and there are times you connect and there are times you don't. But those times that you connect are valuable, and it's what gives you the opportunity to keep going. And I'm grateful for all those moments. I mean, we have those moments through our life, and I think poverty. There are different types of poverty, not just economic poverty. You can have so many different types of poverty. So I think when someone's feeling poor for whatever reason, they have a moment to reflect and also find who really cares and empathizes for them in their situation. And that's what builds friendships based on love and caring. And I think it really shows like who's there for you, because you burn so many bridges in that kind of situation. But it does also show you like who your real friends are, and who's just there for you when everything's going well. So
Right.
it's a very strong filter.
Okay, but I gotta take a step back. You just
Yeah,
mentioned your wife. Now, I
yeah,
don't know your wife. Sounds like she's Superwoman.
yeah. She's on
How
the
many?
couch right now.
How many people? I just can't imagine how many people on a daily basis, when you were on the street, were just
Hmm.
walking past, ignoring you. So this woman stopped. What?
Well,
How did that happen? What? Tell us. This just sounds amazing. How did this? How did she agree? How did that happen that she brought you into her home?
well, the thing was, when you're in that situation, it's not like you're advertising it, right? So you're going from one place to the next, trying to get back on your feet. And I actually met her at a friend's birthday party at a Peruvian restaurant, and she's Peruvian. And it was, you know, it was unexpected. It wasn't planned. And rainy night. It was actually a lot of rain, and it was just you build a friendship with someone, and then it's hard because you don't want to explain everything because you're not proud of the situation you're going through, and you build relationships, and then right now she's on the couch making sure I'm not too loud to wake up our 2-year-old daughter. So
Okay. Well,
it's
tell her
going
I
good.
said she's Superwoman. So I haven't met her yet, but that sounds pretty amazing.
I'll
So,
tell her.
so, so does that, Andrew, explain to me, and I'm sure many of our viewers, again, my perception of homeless people, and I know you said before, which was also very powerful, that not all homeless people don't have a roof. Some people can be homeless in their homes, but
Yeah.
you were in a situation without a roof. My perception is that people who are living on the streets are not really functioning members of society. They're not going to friends' parties. They're not. So, is that common? That your situation, is it common that people um, who don't have a roof are also able to somewhat function in society?
Well, they do function. I mean, they go where they can and what they can do. So, just because you're in that situation doesn't mean you necessarily lose the friends that you had before. So you have those connections, and I think for the most part, it's just really frustrating because when you're going from one place to the next, you don't know what to do. it's just really stressful. It's really stressful. So it is possible to be part of society. You do it within your means. Definitely, I think it's more challenging when you're in the street. I had a commitment when I improved my situation to sleep out in the street 1 to 5 nights every month, and I did that for 3.5 years until COVID came. So that was what stopped that. But every month I spent 1 to 5 nights either at the royal wedding in England or Cannes Festival for the film festival, New York Times Square. That
Why?
was
Why did you do that?
It was my way of reconnecting with homelessness and not forgetting about why we're doing what we're doing. Really understanding people we're trying to help, and every experience was different, crazy. In New York, it was cold. I think it was February or March, and it was quite cold. And I remember you look at the city in a different way. I was looking at all the expensive advertising, and it was like 3 o'clock in the morning. No one's walking by. I'm thinking all the money spent on ad dollars and on the electricity that's not being used, that could be used another way. And we actually you just get bored and creative as well when you're on the street. So we had a box, and as a joke, I wrote "fill the box," right? And we woke up with like 200 and something dollars in there, like the next morning. And but it was, for me, it was forcing myself to be in that, out of my comfort zone. And I think as a result, I learned so much. And it's really, as you can see there, that's one of the sleep outs we had. And the city doesn't sleep. The city doesn't sleep, and there you just meet so many different types of people. I'll tell you one crazy story. In Barcelona, we were sleeping next to a medical facility, and there's this guy who came. He was obviously on drugs. He sat down. He pulled out some heroin. He was telling a story about how his ex-girlfriend left him because she got pregnant with another guy. So he was telling a story of lost love. And as he was shooting up, it's kind of surreal. And then he stood up. He asked me if I wanted any coffee. I said no, thank you. He gave me €3, and he said have a good night and left. And that was, it's hard to it's hard to create and invent those kind of stories. But you have a lot of high charge negativity, but also a lot of goodwill that takes place, and a lot of homeless people give money to other homeless people. So
It's unbelievable.
it's just you list so many stories. It's like you're constantly reading like a bestseller,
Right.
and you're part of it. So
was there an inspiring story? Is like something, I don't know, was there someone when you were on the street that someone else that you connected to, or someone that inspired you? Did you have any experiences like that?
Well, you're obviously inspired by everyone you meet some way or another, but I think you have the opportunity to be inspired by yourself because you have to spend so much time by yourself, and you have to reflect on who you are, what you're doing. And I think I had my moments were challenging, and I had to reflect upon who I was. And so,
Did you ever feel like you just wanted to give up? Like you
of course,
what kept you propelling forward to get out of that situation?
well, one thing is my son, right? So for being able to see my son, he's 7 now. But I would say, obviously there are moments of desperation. Like it wouldn't be normal. It's okay to feel depressed. Like it's okay to be frustrated and like is it worth it kind of thing. But there are normal emotions that anybody would be going through in that kind of situation. I always say you have to be crazy not to go crazy in the street. Like there's no way to be under that high stress and just be nonchalant about it. So I think you just push to your limits, and it has two roads. Takes you down to being a worse version of yourself or a better version of yourself, but it does not allow you to keep being the same you. And I think that's probably the biggest lesson I think anybody learns. And if you're able to change your situation and keep your head up, it's a very valuable lesson you'll learn.
It's also a powerful idea. You said you had your son, and I feel like, you mentioned hope earlier on as well when we were talking, and I feel for so many people that get into a rut, and a rut in life can take so many forms. Like you said, it could be someone living in a mansion, it could be someone on the street. But how do we have hope? How do we persevere? How do we move forward? And that idea of having something to live for, having something, a goal, something that we can see, that light at the end of the tunnel. And in some ways, going back to our theme of freedom versus slavery, in many ways, freedom, what allows us to be who we are, is our hope, is our dreams, is the things that no one can take away from us. There's certain things that people can strip us of everything, or life can strip us of everything, depending on our circumstances. But what we hold on to, what no one can take away from us, that's, if the more we hold on to that, the more we connect to that, that's real freedom. And that, I think, often was what can propel us out of that rut that we often found ourselves in.
Yeah, well, so, I think basically because that rut no longer exists, right? So when you embrace who you are and that moment, then you're no longer enslaved when you don't let the outside person, situation take control of who you are, and you make decisions within your framework. You're no longer enslaved when you don't let the other people or other situations affect how you behave. And I think slavery is when you're forced to do things you don't want to, or you just that aren't for you. But when you're able to be yourself, then you're liberated, no matter if you're in a prison, homeless, or with a in a huge home. I think it's really internal. So we're always normally focused on the external world, but when you're focused to understand how to be happy with yourself and what you have, it changes everything, and it's a liberating experience.
And amazing if you can do that when everything else is stripped away. Like you said, you almost, on one hand, that's the most challenging time to do it. Yeah. But on the other hand, it seems like that's what you have. It's so clear that that's all you have left to almost survive, that it almost becomes the core of who you are. Wow.
Yeah. The silence can become deafening, or it can become peaceful. So as you get used to your own silence and yourself, you either go crazy or you become one with yourself and at peace. And I think that's I think the biggest thing about homelessness is it challenges you as an individual, and it forces you to make decisions and be accountable for them.
I guess that is the core of freedom, right? Is that choice that you make. Do you, like you said, the silence can be deafening, it can drive you crazy, or it can be peaceful. That's real freedom, is making that choice of which direction you want to go, especially at those defining times in life.
Exactly. And our daughter's name is actually Blake Liberty.
Beautiful.
So freedom is at least in her middle name.
Beautiful. Okay, I want to talk a little bit. About your organization and the work you do now, because it's just amazing. And you mentioned, I actually saw that number earlier today: 550,000 homeless people in America. Obviously, you're in Spain. I don't know the exact numbers, but
40,000 approximately.
And homeless people across everywhere. I mean, it's a global issue.
Yeah.
What do you find? What are your biggest challenges in trying to help homeless people? And I would wonder if you could address that both almost on a societal level, but also the challenges you find when you're actually dealing with a homeless person and trying to help them, almost the internal on their part. What are those biggest challenges that you find?
Well, I mean, on an individual level, the biggest challenge is changing routines. How do you change habits and routines? this is the hardest thing. Something as simple as, you know, when you wake up, when you go to sleep, what time you eat, how you do things, how you look for work, how you build friendships, how you communicate, just how you spend your money. There's so many different things. So I think the biggest challenge on an individual level is really improving one's habits. And on a societal level, it's we have three pillars: knowledge, recognition, and change. So getting society to understand the real information, the knowledge about what homelessness is, and then that helps them recognize how they can participate in it, and then that ultimately leads to change. So I think on a societal level, most people just don't care until it happens to them, right? So how can you help people be more awake, if you will, before they actually have to reach that extreme? And we do that through active citizenship, getting people involved, participating, and instead of subsidizing people for what they don't have, like the government normally, they give you, like, imagine you have 35% disability. They pay you for that. What we do is, okay, we accept you have 35% disability, but we focus on empowering the 65% you have, so that way you're rewarded for what you do well. And it psychologically it changes your behavior. So if you get money for, you have a problem with your leg, then you're going to walk funnier when you go there. Maybe you get some more money, right? But if you're paid for, I don't know, copyright, advertising, anything you do, speaking, then people will focus on doing something well. So if I meet someone in the street and they're like, Andrew, I can't work because I'm my legs are crippled. I'm like, well, your mouth works quite well. You can do teleoperator, telecommunication. There's so many different things you can do, right? So it's finding how you can participate within your own framework. And as a society, we have to figure out how to improve the structure and infrastructure so that way people can participate in that process. And on an individual level, people need to adapt, and just realize that sometimes you have to change jobs and fields, and you have to understand what the world is asking for today, not what you did for the last 20 years.
Mm-hmm. It's amazing. And you just see the universal themes that the number one issue is changing routine, changing habit. And again, homelessness is a real issue, and you're dealing it with real people. And it's something I want to talk, and that'll be my next question: what can people do? But to also just take a step back and realize that's the biggest challenge for everyone, all of us.
Yeah.
The way we speak to our loved ones, the way that we treat people at work, the way that we spend money, whatever it is, are the challenges we all have in life. And sometimes we recognize that we're not doing the right thing. We're not being the person that we want to be. Why can't we change? Because it's our routine. It's just we're so used to it. And how to break out of that is such a difficult idea. There's a famous statement by a rabbi who lived a couple centuries ago. So one of the holy books in Judaism is the Talmud. And if you read a page of the Talmud every day, it takes 7.5 years to read the entire Talmud. And this rabbi said that it's more difficult to change one character trait than it is to study the entire Talmud. And how to change for every person, whether, again, you're at the very bottom or not, we all can become better. And that's our challenge in life, is what's holding us back. So that's amazing. What's one thing, Andrew, if I asked you, what's you said your first pillar is knowledge. If there was one thing that you would want society to know about homeless people, what would that be?
That more than anything, you don't ever forget that they're people. That homelessness is a circumstance, but they're people. And like you said previously, we have to empathize by seeing them in us as we're one, just like you said regarding God. So I think people just need to understand that it's another human being that needs just as much as love as you need. They need the same thing, and they're there for various reasons, but that doesn't mean that they have to stay there. So I think it's important to understand that. Also, don't try to change one person's life by yourself. Like, you can't go in there and do everything. Then also understand that person makes decisions too. I remember there was an Italian guy named Andrea, and he was blind in his left eye. And I was able to get a foundation to actually do an operation so he could see again for free. But he told me he was unwilling to do the paperwork. He told me that was my job. And I told him, no, it's not my job. I got this opportunity for you, and if you want it, you need to do it. And he refused. And that was a hard moment for me, because I had to recognize people have the freedom of choice, which means they can make good and bad decisions. And also, we can only guide people. We can't force people to do anything. And that's probably the hardest thing, because I think there's so many people that want to help someone when they see a homeless person, but they don't know how to. And there's just, it's a process. If it takes 7.5 years to read the Talmud, let's just imagine it takes 7.5 years getting to know another human being and actually help that person and understand them. So really taking it slowly, but being consistent, reading that page a day, having that conversation a day with the person to really understand is, I think, the most important thing that we have to do as a society. And it's hard, because it's consistency, and that's what takes to change. In order to change a habit, you have to consistently do something different, and that's what we need to do as a society.
Right. I've heard someone say once, I want to end poverty in the world. I just want to do it tonight, and I want to sleep tonight. So it's like you said, it's the hard work, it's the consistency. So if someone was watching tonight and they're inspired and they say, you know what, I care about this issue, I want to do something, what would you suggest as a first step?
Well, I personally would say reach out to us, start a conversation, and see if there's anything you can do with our community, and also see if there are any opportunities in your community. But I would just tell them, find an organization they connect with and ask themselves, what's the best that they can give? Not the leftovers. What's the best that they can give to that specific organization or that individual, and do it well. But give your best. Find an organization or an individual. It's harder to do on an individual level, but I would recommend finding an organization in your community, or one that's in other communities as well, and connect with them and ask hard questions, and see what you can do to improve. It's how you can add value. Like the picture people are looking at now is with a sponsor of ours called Zero Gray, and it's an e-commerce company. So what they're doing is they're providing sponsorship for one of the programs. They're also mentoring one of the people in the program. They're actually giving an internship opportunity as well. So they're giving the best of their organization with the tools and also human resources. And it's really about giving your best. So my recommendation is find someone that's doing something that you would like to join, or try something yourself, but give your best, and also don't be too hard on yourself.
Right. Beautiful. Can you give us an inspiring story of someone that you saw at that? You're an inspiring story, and you told us your story, but someone you've worked with through your organization, through your work, that you've seen that made it?
There's so many inspiring stories. I'll just give two quick examples. Vincent, he was homeless in Barcelona, from England. He always wanted to give a TED Talk. I gave a TEDx talk. It's not a TED Talk, it's TEDx Talk, but it's something similar. And we got him that opportunity to do that as well at ISALE, which is one of the top business schools. And he was really happy about that. And then I found out about a year ago that he called me, actually, and he said, Andrew, I'm looking for an apartment to rent in Portugal because I'm currently making 4,000 quid a month as a taxi driver for hospitals, and I'd like to buy some property to rent out and have passive income in Portugal. I mean, that's a nice story. Another one is a guy named Beto from Brazil. He was homeless in Barcelona as well, and he was selling Kleenex to make enough money to buy a camera. I don't know how long it would take you to sell Kleenex to buy a 800 euro camera, but he actually did a month and a half because people were paying 20, 30, even 50 euros for the Kleenex because they were buying the story, not the Kleenex. And then I don't know if you like football or soccer, but he was taking pictures at press conferences with Football Club Barcelona, which is one of the best clubs in the world, and he's a photography teacher for my son right now. So
Wow.
you have so many different stories, but I think everybody that's able to improve their life has an amazing story that can inspire someone else to change their life.
Wow. Okay, I'm going to ask you a tough question also, and a personal question. So I don't know your background religiously, spiritually. You seem like a spiritual person. It seems like you have your core, you ooze that of getting that. Did that ever, those types of questions, like when you were in that position, where is God? How did God put me in this situation? Did you experience that, or do you experience that with other homeless people in part of their process? Is there a questioning or a spiritual process that you see, again, either on the doubting, and that's part of the difficulty, or is that sometimes that can help people even get out of that situation, where religion, relationship with God? Yeah, go ahead.
For sure. I'd definitely say being homeless is a religious experience. It's definitely something that awakens you. I think many people use different names for God and have different experiences with God. And even they could, their God could be that there's none. Everybody has a different, if you will, inspirational being that gives them greater purpose in life. And I think when you're in that situation, there are people that become more religious in the street. There are people that become less religious. And there are people that they have the same religious belief during, before, and after. And I really think that the experience that each individual has with God, no matter what name they use, is very powerful, especially when you're reminded, especially when you believe that God is part of who you are. So when you're in that situation, people say, it's not fair. Why would God do this to me? If he loves me, why would he make me suffer? There are so many different emotions and thoughts that can go through someone's head in the street, that I think it challenges people's faith. It also makes it stronger. But it's definitely a personal experience. And I think it's hard not to be spiritual at all when you go through a tough experience like homelessness. When everything's good, I think some people can take things for granted. But I would say that for the most part around the world, everyone has some kind of presence of God or God-like figure that inspires them and also gives them purpose in life.
Beautiful. Okay, we have a question from YouTube. One of our YouTube viewers asked whether you're aware of any studies about homeless people rehabilitating. Is there like success rate, or and I guess that's just interesting, even in your, if you know of studies, or even just in your experience.
Yeah, I mean, that's from Duchess Disney. Hello, Duchess Disney. There are obviously case studies. Our personal experience has been, we've been able to help 35% of the homeless population. There's limited information because if governments do the research, then they have to provide the solutions as well, right? So what you find is government entities normally give lower stats on homelessness. Like in Spain, they'll give, I think it's like 21,000, or sorry, 21,000 or 25 or something like that in the mid-20s. And then the NGO charities that receive more funding when there are more homeless people have a higher number at 40. So the politicians get more votes if there are less homeless people, and NGOs get more money if there are more homeless people. So we're trying to find ways to get better statistics. We're working with data scientists, actually, so that way we can understand the impact of a donation on the type of the individual towards success. And for us, success is them working and being able to pay for their own housing. That's like the main success story. But there are obviously many studies out there. I was speaking with a woman the other day that worked with the government in Toronto, and she told me that they were researching the effect of providing housing for free to people. And they said there was an interesting effect because people that had more serious mental health issues and drug abuse issues, they enjoyed and they appreciated the free housing and took advantage of it more than people that were more mentally stable, which is something they weren't expecting. So there are studies out there, but the information's limited, and I think people are trying to get more data, and more importantly, I think we have to ask the right questions. So, and we push the model from assistance to empowering people. Assistance is necessary, but I think if you look at the data that exists and you ask people if they want to be homeless, normally the answer is no. But you do have people that become comfortably numb, like we said, and they go to their social lunchroom and they've received the free clothing, and eventually they're receiving free housing, and they're pushing basic universal income as well. So we'll see where it goes, but we need more stats and data. Right. I hope I answered her question.
Yeah, no, for sure, and obviously when you talk about donating and supporting your organization, what you do is amazing. If people want to check it out, it's the homelessentrepreneur.org, and you can certainly go to your website, learn more about what Andrew and his organization does, donate to their organization to support their amazing work that they do. We highly encourage people to do that. Andrew, thank you so much for joining us. Any parting words, anything that we didn't touch on that you'd like to express to our audience that about the issue, about yourself, about your organization, please?
Well, I would just thank you all for the amazing opportunity to share my personal experience in our work. We have 4 programs. We have a homeless helpline, which people can contact all around the world in English and Spanish. We have a Homeless Voices program, which provides audiovisual support, so that way they can communicate better. We have a HELP program, which is a 1-year holistic program to make sure they have all the support they need to be active working citizens. And we have a corporate social responsibility hostel we also set up. So I would just say if anybody would like to reach out to us, please do so, either through Aish or through us. And just appreciate the opportunity every time we're able to speak with a community that's interested in listening to what we have to say. We learn a lot and we try to add value. So reach out to us, and hopefully the next time we speak, I'll be able to say more things than Nashika and Shalom. So.
Well, your words tonight were very inspiring, and to see someone who doesn't just speak those words but acts on them as a role model is incredibly inspiring. And for us, it's a central value of that we are responsible for each other. We're responsible for the world. Like you said, seeing people as human beings, seeing them as created in the image of God, to take that step to really help each other is such an important pillar of who we are as a community, as a Jewish community. And the bigger topic also that we talked about tonight, leading into Passover, and this idea of freedom and what really holds us back, and personal responsibility to make ourselves better, to make the world a better place. It's such a powerful idea that I think you touched on in a really eloquent way. So gave us a lot to think about, and hopefully do more than just thinking, but do something about it and act on it and make a difference. So thank you, Andrew, for joining us. Thank you to everyone tonight who joined us for Thursday Night Live. We'll be back next week for the third part in our series leading up to Passover next Thursday night at 8 o'clock Eastern. If you haven't yet, please subscribe to our Aish YouTube channel so you'll get all the notifications to join us each week for Thursday Night Live and for all of our other programming that we do as well. Thank you again to our guest, Andrew Funk, and for all the great work that he does. And have a great night to everyone. Thank you for joining us.
Have a wonderful Passover. Thank you.